Greetings, everyone, and welcome to ACEDS, Data Unmasked, streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. My name is Mike Quartararo. I am the president of ACEDS. Today, we will be joined very shortly by Gabe Landau, Vice President of eDiscovery and Incident Response Solutions at Haystack. Haystack, of course, is a legal service provider that provides professional services in eDiscovery, information governance, cybersecurity, you name it. You can visit HaystackID.com to learn more about their offerings. Haystack, of course, is also a valued partner of ACEDS, and we like to showcase what our partners are doing for the benefit of our listeners. So we invited Gabe to join us to discuss what's happening within the industry, what's happening with him, and some of what he's been up to at Haystack. All right, let's get into it. Gabe, thanks so much for making time to join us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Awesome. So I always like to start with a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you found your way into eDiscovery.
Yeah.
Your new role as EVP.
No, just Vice President of eDiscovery.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Vice President of eDiscovery and Incident Response. And what's happening at Haystack?
Did you see my goals? Is that why you pulled it out here? Did I share that with you? No, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I am the Vice President of eDiscovery and Incident Response Solutions here at Haystack. I help guide clients as they navigate, on the litigation or government investigation side, the complex data sources, how to get them into a review platform, and of course, produce accordingly. And on the cyber side, really focusing heavily on the data mining, how to streamline and optimize, and reduce data sets before they get to have to be analyzed for business, legal, or regulatory purposes. The cyber side, is a really interesting field, a really growing business where it's an intersection of, insurance carriers, legal, technology, and, everyone in that space really needs to know what's going on because it's just changing all the time, right? You have all these regulations that are changing. You have all these technologies, the threat actor activity is changing. You have policies changing, and of course you have technology. So it's fascinating, and it really keeps me on my toes to be able to be like constantly a lifelong learner in that space.
Yeah, and I've always said that, there's overlap between what happens in, let's call it pure eDiscovery,
Sure.
cyber, privacy. There's overlap in these things, and some of the processes that, before the words privacy were a thought, in the early 2000s when I started doing this, nobody was talking about cyber or privacy, though they were no less legitimate claims or concerns then. But the processes that we've identified in eDiscovery really translate well, at least some of them, into these other sort of adjacent fields. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there's a framework for which we can repurpose as a starting point in our eDiscovery kind of modalities into cyber. It's not actually a one-to-one transfer though, right? Because when your work product is different, right? Your work product in cybersecurity, you're not looking for responsiveness or producing the other party. You're going to a notification list, right? And what you're looking for within the documents in order that are being analyzed is not substantive. It's actually just more objective, and you're looking for entities that you're extracting that might be in scope. And those are kind of different, just kind of viewpoints to as you're from a perspective when you're looking at data and kind of devising workflows. We have been able to utilize some of the same platforms, like we do use Relativity, right? But we had to customize it in order to make objects and fields and integrations between other to get the data into it, and to also like deduplication rules and normalization and these large spreadsheets that, you would typically, redact in like a, potentially in a, responsiveness review. This is more about, these can be like, put your entire process to a halt if you don't get your arms around them, and the balloons costs. And so we had to create custom tools that can help automate that process, right? It's really an insurance driven industry, right?
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Lots of liability.
Yeah.
So I completely lost all sense of time in the last, 4 or 5 years, but it didn't occur to me until we did a little prep for this that you're fairly new to this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, for those in the audience who are listening, like, how do you go from not in this industry to sort of a leading consultant in this industry, virtually, I'll say overnight, although I mean, in fairness, let's call it 5 or 6 years, I think.
Yeah, it's been about 6 years, exactly. A lot of luck. No, a lot of preparation.
But is there something that stands out to you, like if someone's thinking of either making a move or breaking in, what is the 1 or 2 things that really served you well?
Yeah, I mean, constantly staying curious, right? And being a learner, right? I love people and I love connecting with people and I love being in service. And, what I was doing before, I was a reality TV producer, right? And it was really different, but I had to really always, think on my toes. You were moving mountains in a short amount of time. You had budget constraints and you had clients and you had management and, you had a goal that you had to kind of move the herd towards. And in those ways, it's very similar to what we're doing here. The bridge to get from that to here is pretty wide. I happened to get an opportunity to work at a company here through a family friend and, really started to get it was just totally fascinating to me, to be honest. I mean, the vernacular, the cadence, the people, the stakes of every case are huge, right? And that's really exciting to me, right? And it's very unique. Like if I was a bus, working at a restaurant, and you bring out the wrong meal, you can kind of, fix that and pivot and, make it right pretty quickly without real reputational damage potentially, and you could really get your arms around it. Here, there's damages at stake. There's livelihoods at stake, and there's besides reputational and actual damages. So it's an exciting field.
So, fun fact to our listeners: Gabe's being modest. He's actually an Emmy award-winning producer and director. Tell us a little bit about that. Would we know the show? Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I got really fortunate. I went to college in Ithaca College, and the director of Fear Factor went to Ithaca College, and I interned for him, and then I moved to Los Angeles for 15 years, and so I worked on shows like Fear Factor, America's Top Model, Project Runway, Top Chef, and I won the Emmy for The Amazing Race.
And that's awesome. And so, just going off script a little bit here, what skills did you find transferable to this space?
Yeah. Honestly, like one of the biggest, the reason why I was successful there and in part why I have success here is just the ability to be trustworthy, right? It's really mission critical because, again, with all the stakes everything that's at stake for everything that goes on here, you want someone that's accountable, that's responsible, that's going to show up, when things go right. And it's going to show up probably more importantly, when things go off the rails, right? And they're going to communicate, exactly. And communication for me is just so important. I think about in my own personal life, when I work with a provider in my house or in my personal life, and, someone who's going to keep me abreast along the way of what's going on and any changes. And so that there's no surprises along the way. I'd rather work with people that I want to work with, that I know that I can trust, that have that integrity, than somebody who might be that might have like the greatest product on earth, but they're the nightmare to work with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like it's just incredible, right? Like the amount of calls you get on a Friday at 7 o'clock at night because productions need to go out the door, or, hey, can you do this? And who can move the mountain? Who has the internal political capital to make inside your organization to be able to move the mountain when the mountain needs to be moved? And I think that I've been able to prove that. And I've been really fortunate, right? I mean, I started with, learning. I did the eDex, certification and just to kind of like really start bolstering my understanding of this foundationally. And then, you learn as you go. Attaching myself to mentors has been extremely important for me. Involved with networking groups, obviously conferences, further certifications on the privacy side with the IAPP. And, I just think that for me, I never want to stop growing, right? And learning. And that's kind of why I got out of television. I was like, this is not, I have 2 kids. This is just boring, right? It's crazy to say that now, but it just wasn't fitting my needs, And so here, there's always something more to learn, always something more to do, and always room to grow.
That's fine. All right, let's get back to our industry. So I understand you are fresh off the Net Diligence and Cyber Risk Summit in Miami Beach. For those who don't know, Net Diligence sort of brings together cyber risk insurance, legal, regulatory, security, privacy, blah, blah, blah. And they focus on, the cyber landscape, risk, and incident response. Tell us a little bit about the conference, what you came away from, what you took away.
Yeah, sure. So, about 3 years ago, when I started to put a lot of my focus into cyber, we're really focusing on the post-breach data mining aspect because it's a huge pain point, much like document review is on the eDiscovery space. And, the tools and technologies that are being applied there, there's room for standards and practices and best practices and kind of to be able to standardize across the industry. And that's really exciting to me. But the big takeaway for this, obviously, threat activity is going to continue. But also, this third-party risk, these class action claims that are arising out of all of these notifications and that are being put onto the kind of state regulator regulator notifications. That shoe fully hasn't dropped yet in that industry, and it's in that side. And there's the preparation for the explosion of that and the proliferation of it is what was really paramount here. Funny enough, GAI was not really a big part of the conversation, right? What is I think that there were a lot of providers that were talking about AI and they were using it more as a marketing scheme as opposed to using it more as a responsible way, as a force multiplier to get better insights quickly. That happens to be how we approach it here with at Haystack.
Awesome. Share with our listeners, if you would, and I'm going to sort of combine 2 questions here. What are some of the common cybersecurity challenges you're observing, and what key strategies should be part of any company's sort of breach or cyber preparation plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think mission critical is to get your arms around your data, right? You need to have good data hygiene. I think, the idea that you aren't going to be hit is kind of in our rear view, right? It's not a matter of if, it's going to be a matter of when.
Yeah, it's kind of a fool's errand.
Yeah, that's right. So having your arms around the data with good data hygiene is going to minimize any downstream risk, costs, or damages, on the outset. If that resource is not available because it is, time or technology, then or cost, right? Then you really need to have a plan and really doing kind of regular tabletop exercises with the key partners that you have is very, these incidents are the single worst day of the company's life.
Yeah.
Right. And emotions fly high in those incidents. And the last thing you want to do is be making decisions based on emotion in any sort of traumatic event. And, you want to have a plan, and it should not be this really robust 10, 11 page document. It should be a 1 to 2 page document with the key players, who's doing exactly what and at what time, and who's talking to who with specificity. And that doesn't take that much. It's not a big lift to do if you want to do it internally or work with your breach counsel in order to do that.
So you guys and Haystack, I say you guys like you're an island, but Haystack won a huge award at Legal Week. I was actually in the room at the dinner in the category data privacy and cybersecurity for its Protect Analytics AI, and that's the 2024 Legal Week Leaders in Tech Awards. How does Protect Analytics AI help managing in areas of potential data breach and overall risk management?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's a really great example of why I am a haystacker. I've been here from the beginning. I love.
Is that what they call them, haystackers?
Well, I think I just coined it. I got to talk to Rob.
Okay. All right. We're gonna run with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the greatest things about Haystack is our ability to innovate and be able to pivot and adjust to what the market needs. And there was a clear need to understand the data from a kind of business sensitivity or a protect or a PII or PHI, or what can be used also in the eDiscovery space with a tool that learns as it goes. And so we created this tool and had it homegrown so that there's, again, better insights into the data before it goes to a human review to do. It's just like this is where it's really similar. And we take a similar posture to eDiscovery. You have to have a defensible process and workflow that you could attest to ultimately, potentially down the line if questioned by regulators or plaintiffs' counsel, right? And this tool is absolutely a game changer as it relates to understanding the potential data that you need to review or look at for notification purposes. And where we find it's really helpful is to where we use it to how we defensively reduce the data, sample the data, or validate overly inclusive or less inclusive, and so or under inclusive parts of the data set. And it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. We provide crazy amounts of value on it with not a big lift, and it was really nice to be able to recognize for it on the eDiscovery space. Think about it. Think about the applications that could be used on this, right? If you have data that, just from all the GDPR requirements or data localization or any sort of redaction that potentially needs to be done for sensitive information, we apply this all the time. And it's just, it's really kudos to the development team here to be able to not just create it and grow it, but also execute, implement, and then get recognized for it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's baked right into your relativity instance, right? So any customers of a Haystack can access this.
That's correct. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we're coming up on time, but before we go, I always like to ask what have you got coming up industry wise, industry event wise? What are you looking forward to? What are you excited to learn, see, do?
Yeah, I think that, from a look forward perspective, it's going to be really interesting to see some of the administration's perspective, the regulators' perspective, and more their execution and implementation of some of their mandates coming out. I think that's going to be an interesting time for our industry. I think that for us, industry conference wise, all the kind of big players, ILTA, Clock, and Georgetown, and I'm not probably will not go to Relativity Fest, but there's some cyber conferences coming up as well. But I think ultimately it's about getting in position and keeping the conversations going with my clients and potential future partners that, Haystack's amazing that there is not a data source that we cannot collect and put into the review platform. And it's just every time we're challenged with a new data source that's coming up, especially in the ephemeral message space, our team just goes and they figure out ways to collect it in real time. Right. Yeah. I think it's just fascinating. And so that's kind of where I'm at, from a I'm not seeing what I am seeing and hearing is the kind of responsible use of GAI. We're still doing a lot of testing and development on our end to use it responsibly. And that'll be interesting to see where that goes also in the next kind of 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting with bated breath, waiting to see who wins the generative AI war.
Well, it's funny, we're at Legal Week, that was kind of, obviously people were talking about a new company.
Yeah, but it was over the top. You couldn't go 10 feet without hearing or seeing, Gen AI.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, how are you actually using it, and kind of what's your methodologies? And then that's where kind of everyone got caught flat-footed.
Yeah, really, really important. Everyone, lift the hood and take a look underneath.
Have to.
Have to, absolutely. All right, listen. How do listeners get in touch with you if they are interested in making contact?
Yeah, just email me at glandau@HaystackID.com.
Awesome. And I think you're on LinkedIn. People can find you. You're not hard to find. All right, this has been great. Gabe, thanks so much for making time. And thank you to Haystack for making you available to us. I really appreciate it.
This is great. Thank you. Always great.
Appreciate it. Listen, everyone, if you're interested in our short form video interviews like this one, you can find Data Unmasked and We Are ACEDS live streams in your LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook feeds, or check out the ACEDS YouTube channel where you can watch previous interviews. Gabe, thank you. Haystack, thank you. Thanks for making time for us today, everyone. Appreciate you. Have a great day and be kind to one another.